You've used Claude, you've used Cowork maybe you've gotten into Claude Code or Codex. The bottleneck is no longer how good the model you're using is. The limiting factor now to getting AI native is being able to take advantage of the building blocks that Claude Code gives you. We've shipped Claude Code into production for multiple go-to-market organizations now. And what I'm picking up is a lot of people think they've become AI native when they use AI to do simple things like write their emails or edit their drafts. And on the other hand, right, there are peers of mine who are in a completely different world now. There are things that we can do today that even 6 months ago, we could not pull off without strenuous effort. And so by the end of this video, I want to make it clear to non-technical teams that they can take advantage of the building blocks, of the primitives that Claude Code gives you and how you can tie them into your workflows. I'm aiming for 45 minutes. Let's see how far I get. But by the end of this, you'll be able to see from my perspective in the go-to-market world, how a full go-to-market system is built on Claude Code, every layer and every piece that goes into it. When I refer to building blocks in Claude Code, what am I talking about? You've heard these terms, right? Skills, subagents, hooks, MCP, plugins, and routines. I'm going to be touching on two things in this video. One is how all these things tap into each part of a go-to-market workflow, but also some of the newer releases that Claude and Anthropic have released over the last 30 days and how they tie into how we do our work now. From a sales perspective, our world is broken down into a few steps. If I can simplify this, the go-to-market world is built on you want to find your market, you want to enrich your target market, you want to add the relevant context, you want to personalize any of your outreach, and you want to learn from your efforts and continue to improve. And what I'm going to show in this video is how this ties in nicely with the building blocks I keep referring to that Claude Code gives you. And so what I'm going to do in this video, the way to think about this is these are all layers, and the video will be structured this way where we go all through 7 layers. Sorry, we go through all 7 layers one by one. In the first layer, we're going to look at a specific skill we have that helps with the find step, but also how to build your own skills in the way that Anthropic tells you to do it. We're going to look at subagents, and they're going to be dispatched in parallel, so your context never fills up and you make the most of whatever plan you're paying for. If you're using up your session limits, I think this will be an important step to understand. When it comes to having the right context at the right time, there are entire products that exist to do this that companies pay a lot for. But if you can understand MCP, when to call the right thing, if you can build your own hooks that will build out your context for you, you get to take advantage of the deep file system that Claude Code is able to dig into without bloating your context or without getting lost in all the files that you populated. In the personalization layer, we're going to look at specific skills that will help with writing better. Some people think this is the only step. This is just one step. And also creative ways to find unique leads. And in the 5th layer, we're going to iterate and improve on our process by taking advantage of the very recently released goal/command. This has made waves in Codex over the last 2 weeks or so, and has very quietly been added to Claude Code. And I love super excited to try this out. We've done some very cool things. I'll show you. Basically, this is when you have a really long running task that you want to accomplish or something that requires many iterations to get right. This is going to help you. There were people kind of built their own solutions to this previously, but we're getting better results using the go/command so far. It's still very early. And then you can package everything and ship it as a plugin and schedule everything as routines. And this is going to be done in the Claude Code desktop app. So we have 5 GTM layers. We have 6 Claude Code building blocks, 2/commands. Nearly a month ago, Anthropic released the updated Claude Code desktop app, and we're going to jump right in there. Hello from the Claude Code desktop app. New and rebuilt as of a month ago, and I like it much better. I'll show you a couple of things that I like that are new. If you don't know where to find this, open the Claude app, you have chat on the left, co-work in the middle, jump into code. First thing is routine. This is just like cron jobs basically turned into a product, but you can now schedule tasks that you want to do on a recurring basis. And you can choose, right? I want to do this every week, every day, every 2 days, whatever the case is. Super useful. I will show this at the very end of this video. This is the final layer. It's really easy to customize your skills and plugins. And a lot of these things are new to the Claude Code desktop app. They weren't here in January, and that's why I ended up starting off with VS Code, because to me, I could see files in this way, and this was pre, but you can do all of these things in here now. Things that you would have done before that you can now do here. If you have a look, right, you can see your usage on a 5-hour basis, on a weekly basis, or I have to jump into a session to show you this. Don't read this. Don't ask me why I'm sneaking into my co-working room at 3 a.m. If you click here, you can see how much of your context window for that session has been used. This is really cool, but then also a breakdown of where is the token usage going across messages, system tools, MCP tools. And if you're using up your session limits frequently, I'm sure there are patterns here that you can find. And also just take a screenshot of this, send it to Claude, and ask it what you can do better. Other neat things that are in here now, there's a lot of flexibility on the effort that you put in. I believe if you do things in terminal, you just have 3 options versus the 5 here. You can select your model, of course. Command Shift N also gives you quick access to do this. And then there's an entire new view on the side where you can access terminal, your file. So you have terminal on the side, which is a big reason why people stayed away from the Claude desktop app. You have access to that now. You can see diff views for any files that you push. You can see your files and open any relevant files that you want to look at in here, which was a huge advantage to me of why I was using VS Code earlier, right? So I could see this look. To me, this is pretty. But I have access to that in here now, and it's out. And another thing you get is you can also click through on any files and see the changes live. And you can see behind the scenes, right, where we're adding firecrawl to be our method of choice for our first skill that we're going in to get into. Let's jump into it. I'm going to show you layer 1. Okay, setting new background, new anthropic thinking cap. Okay, we're going to jump right in with the first layer, which is find in a context, go to market. People think this is just how do I find who to talk to, but this is deeper than that. The real question is how in-depth and unique can your targeting be? And this can only be achieved when you aren't just writing and downloading from the same database that everyone else is paying $100 a month for. You want your own bespoke process based on context that's relevant to you. And we're going to do this through custom skills. I'm going to take you over to VS Code just to show you our skills that we use, right? We have our email writing skill, our skill to find unique job posts, pulling LinkedIn posts, replies, proposals, and I'm going to focus on our signal builder, which helps us build out very valuable signals that we can use in our outreach layer. And if you want to see the file, right, this is what it looks like. I'm going to link to the actual skill so you can use it on your own. But this is what it looks like, right? It's powered by firecrawl. Shout out to them. They do really, really great job when it comes to scraping web pages and being precise and capturing things that other tools cannot, right? It will load client context. It will go through specific pages. It will pull out unique signals. These are all things that I used to do myself manually, very slowly as a sales rep in a pre-AI era. And I'm going to show you how this works on a live prospect. Now we're going to use Sense as an example. Why Sense? Oh, I mean, look at this. There is the $140 million to sell to laundromat owners. What a business. And these kinds of companies are the ones who do the best work, where they have a sales motion, but they're targeting a non-typical IBO customer profile. And so we're going to use them as an example kind of throughout this video. I'm going to jump right into code in the desktop app and say signal builder trisense.com. Now, why does this work so easily, right? All the work went into building out this actual skill in the first place. And the question then becomes, how do you build great skills? It used to be the case that you would do this sort of on your own not too long ago, right? You'd look through Fathom's advice on, one of the requirements for a file structure. How do you run testing for a skill? People would type this as recently as December and January. And what's happened since then is Anthropic team has dropped their own skill creator tool. And this tool comes with 4 agents under the hood that do 4 things. One, they're going to run and execute. They will evaluate the outputs against the expectation. It will run blind A/B tests, and an analyzer that will make suggestions for improvement. So it will run its testing on its own. And that's how we built these skills, right? We're not writing these by hand. I haven't typed a word of this on my own. This is a set of iterations that the skill creator tool allows us to build. And if you think about this for you, this is the highest leverage way to capture your team's knowledge. If we're evolving beyond the wikis and the 2-hour Bloom videos and the long, 10-page SOP into compostable, reusable workflows, then you want to build the very best skill possible.
There's no better way to use this or to do this than the way the Claude Code team, the Anthropic team uses on their own. The skill creator.
And okay, I've given this enough time, and we are pulling a lot of interesting context on Trisense as company. And yes, I ran this just before recording to see how it would look, but you can see what it's pulled because I'm running this fresh again, and it's telling you, okay, they power 1 in 6 US laundromats, but that's not what we care about. What we care about are the actual signals. So signal 1 is the most obvious one. They've raised a bunch of money, but then less obvious is they're expanding into 4 verticals. Very interesting. Their GTM leadership is transitioning. And if you were to just run this blind, like if you type into your own, if you try this at home and typing for Claude Code, find unique signals for me about this company, it won't be this good because I'm running this on our signal builder skill, which is trained specifically to look for great signals that make them a match for us. And so for us, this is a perfect content, right? I might send them this video because they look like exactly the kind of thing that we want to work. It's not only telling me that there's transition, there are very specific things that it's flat. So Nicholas, who's I believe the sales leader, is looking for someone who is described as the glue to carry out the architectural mandate for sales, marketing, CS, onboarding support. And they're actively hiring for a VP of marketing. Second signal is that they shipped AI recently. Right, so they're not just talking the talk. They are shipping features that shows that this is what their positioning is like. How does it know this? From a specific LinkedIn post from Alex, who is the CEO. Third is that they are non-traditional. Their ICP, their ideal customer profile, is non-traditional, right? You can't find them on a database. And so you can see they're growing from, I'm learning this as we go. They're growing from much laundromats to other verticals, none of which are easy to discover. And so, right, they will need a separate solution, which is great context for a company like us. And the fourth one is their account executive hiring. Anyways, this is really interesting. The 4 great signals. We do follow, right, PQS and PVP, the email framework from Jordan Crawford. I showed this to show you, like, this is a single prompt's worth of work, but it's not just a prompt. A skill that's had a lot of time and effort go into it. And I'm going to build a new skill live and show you the outputs. So we're going to build this live now. And the whole purpose behind this is I'm going to build a skill called reply triage. And this is something that I'm going to use later on in a video. And the common theme you'll see is everything you build is, right, like build once, use many times. Everything's reusable. Every Claude Code primitive I discuss here is something that will make your future work easier or less redundant or just better in terms of output. And so I've prepared this prompt here in terms of what I want reply triage to do. But basically what this is this is going to replace our N8N workflow. And I'm going to ship this live. What we used to do was we had sort of a manual process for determining our classifier for this is a good email or this is a bad email and how they're triaged basically. And we're codifying that knowledge into a skill now for our replies that come from email bison. And so, okay, pasted a little bit weird, but main things you want is explain clearly what the output you're looking for is, explain when the skill should be used, and explaining if you have specific outputs, like we have classification categories, I'm going to tell it that, right? So to guess, if I didn't know, I could tell it to make its best guess based on the context. Any rules? Because I've given this some thought, and I'm also going to add skip the interview steps, because sometimes it will go back and forth and ask questions. I'm just going to push this as it is because I'm recording. But I would not skip the interview steps if this was on my page. I'm trying to keep this video short. And if we look at the output it's given us, it ran the command, it created 2 files, and now we have the skill.nb file itself, or you can also see it in here, right, where you have reply triage, how to invoke, classification categories, and also, all right, this is taking this further than the prompt that I asked for, and then a separate file to contain the categories. And so anytime I have replies now, I can run it against this. And just looking at this here,
some of the things it's called out, if you look at it closely, is
it's automatically on its own to determine, right, how to strip noise, how to find the strongest signal, right? Unsubscribe is a very clear signal compared to someone saying something meaningless like Happy Friday, right? Like to apply this level of logic into the reasoning. Again, you want to use the primitives given to you to build better primitives within Claude Code. I'd also add to this is super scalable. If I go back to the with sense.com, like we have examples of clients where we've run this for, one example was we do this for 16,000 prospects over 40 minutes, which is crazy numbers, even compared to, like I said, this time last year you did something in Clay. Or if you compare to 4 years ago, if you want to do this through a tool like ZoomInfo or Apollo, there's something a little bit static about both, in that you create a table in Clay, you create a list in Apollo, and you get an output, but it's hard to repeat. With the skill, you have an SOP that you can use again and again, and that will improve over time. So it's scalable, it's affordable at cost, depending on the APIs that you're using, and it carries intelligence over much better than a static workflow like a table or a CSV export. You're building knowledge layers that will work for you in the future. So now's the first layer, right? Once you have a company you want to go after, what are the unique signals you should go after? And we unlock some really interesting examples of signals by using Sense, the company, as the sort of the prototype here. And we found some really interesting signals we want to go after. Layer 2 is the actual enrichment step. We're going to go after these signals now, not just for our friends at Sense, but for a larger list of companies. When you want to scale this work out, what you don't want to do is run all of this work in a single session and have all your context used on the same work that you're trying to do for all the companies in a single session. In a ChatGPT era, for example, what you would do is you'd open chat. What you would do in 2023 and 2024 is you would open chat, you would go to the company you want to research, and you would say, hey, find unique signals on these guys. You'd get an answer, and then you'd say, okay, find me more signals on company A, B, C, D, E, and then eventually you'd get frustrated because your outputs would break down. This is a really poor way to make use of the context that you have available to you. What's really neat about subagents, which is the primitive that layer 2 is going to be focused on, is if you take a look here, right, like this is the context that's available to you. To be 200,000 tokens, it's 1 million tokens now on Opus 4.7, right? In red is the context window that you've used up. This is going to use up a certain amount of tokens. This will use up 5x the amount of tokens that you used here. What you can do though is have sort of like these assistants that run for you and execute on your research. Subagents have the best performance when it comes to the best performance they have comes from research related tasks. And if you look here, I've taken these screenshots from the Anthropic subagents video, but instead of having, right, big guy, a master agent taking all the work, you can ask specifically for subagents to take on specific action items. These guys are being worked, but the only context that's being used in the main session is the output that they do. So I'm going to do research now, right, for not just TriSense, but for all 5 companies, but I'm going to do them with subagents. And instead of, right, like this is going to take a lot of tokens. You're going to have to go onto the website, The skill is going to look at all this funding information, all these posts on LinkedIn. That's a lot of tokens. I don't want that to come from this. I want that to come from this because this is not counting against my real limit, which is that I'm working against, which is my session limit, which is the main session. Let me show you this inside of Claude Code. And if I take a look here, here's a list of the 20 companies that I care about. Sense was the first one, but I have many more companies that are on, right? Like the revenue hit list, let's say. So I'm going to say here, I want you to spin up 4 subagents for each company. For each subagent, they should be focused on a specific signal that we unlocked. The first signal is going to be how much of a priority AI is for their company. Second signal is going to be their funding history. And then the other 2 will be their tech stack and then also their hiring signals. I want you to run this for 5 more companies on the target prospect list in the prospects folder. Skip Sense because we looked at that already, but give me this research for the next 5 companies. And I've jumped back in. It's told me it's going to launch 20 parallel agents, right? So the equivalent here for what we're looking at is not just one of these little guys, but there's 20 of these little guys that are going to be running around. And they're all going to feed their little summary back to the main context window. And you can see the work that it's doing, right? It identified the next 5 companies on the list that I asked it for. So there's one sub agent that's exclusively working on Boulevard, the AI priority signal for Boulevard. Then there's another sub agent that's looking at the funding history signal for Boulevard. Something that you should know is just about context windows in general. Just because there's a million tokens, don't use a million tokens, right? Don't even use 500,000 tokens. Your accuracy will degrade. I try to keep things under 200,000 tokens where possible. And sub agents are a big part of how I'm able to keep it that way.
What's cool is part of the new features in the
Claude Code desktop tab is you have tasks here. So when you have sub agents that are running, I can click on any one of them. I can see all the sub agents here. So these are the ones that are completed. These are the ones that are still running. And if I want to check how accurate something is, I'll tap into this here and I get to see the output. I don't have to wait for all 20 to be done. I can see how things are working live.
So in this case, which company was this? Boulevard.
There's their score. They've raised a bunch. They're a massive company.
This is exactly what I want to see. If I look at, let's say, Boulevard and I want to see their tech stack.
Oops, goes along one. We can see tools that they're using. They have an open GTM engineer role.
That says Salesforce, Clay, Lean Data, Gong, Outreach, Zapier.
This is, right, come talk to me. This is exactly who, this was, right, like it'll tell me, this was like a revenue scope of work. It's exactly the kind of work they do. And it was able to, because it's doing this in a sub-agent, it would not be able to fit all of this context in if it was a single session running this for 20 companies at once, right? It just would not, it would tell you, yes, we did the research, but it could not go this in depth. But now I know specifically what the GTM engineer at this company,
what tools he or she's going to be expected to use. This is a great research.
And it's because there's a sub agent whose sole job is to feed me this information and it's doing the job.
Okay, and just to see how it worked in the end, it found
all 20 signal files and it scored all 5 companies across all 4 signals that I asked it to look at. And give me a total score, right? These guys go above and beyond once there are sub agents involved. I happened to click on the best signal, which was the tech stack that Boulevard is looking for. Owner.com, well, shout out to them. They're opening Toronto office and everything, but they are very high in terms of AI prioritization. Hostaway is doing a bunch of SDR hiring across multiple geographies. And their engineering AI is quite mature. Squire has 3 very interesting roles open at once. Enablement, RevOps, and product marketing. So there's a lot that is going to be taking place here. And then open space in Desert Life has as much as we, especially on the hiring front.
This is amazing research and would never be possible in a chat type
interaction or even in Claude Code without the help of subagents. So now what we've done is we had skills help us find the best signals we can look into. Then we took those signals and have subagents give us the best possible research.
Onto the next layer. The next layer is contextualizing things. This is actually the biggest bottleneck I see non-technical teams, go-to-market teams face, is how do we get the right context at the right time? I did a demo before at one of the topic demo days on the challenges that go-to-market teams face because we are used to this world, right? I need a Salesforce admin who can help me get my data out of Gond. It's hard to connect Salesforce in with Zoom Info. We need a Clay expert to pull the enrichment from there. Someone has to tie everything in. Right, we're siloed. Everything is all the context is to the folder.
All the context is tied within these tools. It's buried in here or in the mind of sales enablement or RevOps, and then they get hired by another company and no one knows where anything is. Very, very common occurrence. And then the antidote to this is, well, how do you get the right context at the right time inside of Claude Code? 4 ways you can do this. One is the first and most simple is just the natural Claude memory you get.
I'm going to go through hooks and how hooks help us get the right context at the right time. Then an example of how we use MCP to get all of our call data from our sales calls and also client calls to feed Claude Code at any given point, and then custom skills to get even more unique voice and context, this time from your prospects rather than internal. When it comes to Claude memory, it's fairly simple. What you want here is, right, a really solid Claude ND file. Every prompt, every session, every question you have will go against. We'll read your Claude.nd file first, and this should give the right structure and kind of point your entire Claude session. That's first, as well as just being organized in terms of your file structure overall. But second is in terms of hooks, there's a couple of different ways. Well, first of all, what are hooks? Hooks are basically, you can kind of predict how Claude Code will respond to certain things, but hooks are sort of these rules that you add that are very deterministic and will say, right, no matter what, when this happens, do this. And when this happens can mean before making a tool use call, after a tool use call, at the end of a session. At these very specific points, always do the following. And so example of one that we use here that helps us get the right context at the right time is user prompt submit. Anytime there is a word that matches a client folder or a prospect folder, that folder will be loaded. So you've already kind of seen this at work, right? When I say there was already a sense folder that we were referring to. So as soon as I said something about sense, it knows what folder to look up without having to search, the entire repo to find, or the entire file structure to find where is a mention of sense. It knows already. It does this through a regex match. So this is a hard rule. It does not have to think on its own. It's just a hook that forces this every single time. And this is how, at least for us, right? Like we care about. We have client folders that matter a lot and prospect folders that matter a lot. And we will always have, if you ever type in the right word, it will match them automatically and pull the correct folder in. So that's hooks, that's Claude memory, and then MCP. Lots to be said about when is it right to use an MCP, when is it right to use CLI instead. In our case, we do all of our calls in a tool called Fathom. Fathom is our note taker of choice. Shout out to them. Shout out to others like Granola. You can do the same thing here. But what we are able to do here is in our internal folder, there's a folder called prospects. Obviously, I cannot show you who's in the prospects list. But what we did through MCP is I've loaded every sales call that Zevenu has had over the last 2 to 3 years, ever since we started using Fathom. And it has automatically on its own taken all those calls and created a folder for every prospect. And in each prospect, there are notes in there. And if I click on a specific prospect, I am able to click on calls and see a specific MD file with that specific call from that specific date. So then when I say, hey, can you, when I say, hey, Claude, can you pull a specific piece of information I need from a call I had 2 months ago? It's already there. It's already live. I have the summary. I also have the live transcript if it needs to be more specific. In this case, this was done through a public repo. It's not even a public repo. I'm one of the 2 people that started. Shout out to Trevor Welch. But it worked fine, right? Bring your own API key, and it automatically populated all of our folders. And so now if I want to say something like, if I want to jump into Claude Code and say something like, tell me, why am I yelling? Sorry, I didn't need to yell. Tell me 3 unique pain points I can target in a proposal from my call in March with Cap. Is Cap a real company? No, I took a real call that we had in March with a real company and re-anonymized it and called it Cap because I'm capping. But this is based off of a real call. Just the names have been scrubbed and the details of the engagement have been scrubbed. And you can see here, it has the specific March 13 call file. And it's pulled 3 very specific points, right? There are calls in LinkedIn happening on these specific tools, but not everything is connected. It's telling me what's connected and what isn't. There's an agency that's being used. There is the TAM lives in spreadsheets, but it's not in HubSpot. To be fair, this is a problem that many companies face. But right, I don't have to go through my calls anymore, and I don't have to go through in lots of context, lots of tokens to find this specific call. The call is already pulled. It's done through MCP. It sits there. I just have to reference the prospect name and when the call was. And I even have a specific skill to build proposals. I won't go through that now because it's not what we're talking about. But that is how we get the right context at the right time. The 4th example of this is, let's say we wanted to take things further for our research for the company Sense and the other company Boulevard. And I wanted to know not just the signals that we've pulled, but I want as much context as possible. We have a skill called sent prospect. We have a skill called prospect posts that allows us to pull LinkedIn posts, specific companies or specific individuals as specific prospects at companies that we're looking to reach out to. There's no better context. Like if you want to reach out to a CEO, a 500-person company, and you don't have an in, the best source of information is to see what they're saying online directly. And so what I'm going to pull here is run prospect posts on Sense and Boulevard. Okay, it spelled Sense wrong. That's fine. It's a pronunciation issue. Let's see what comes out. So I let it run. It figured out who the actual leadership roles are at Boulevard. I asked it to give me folks who are more GTM aligned. Anyways, to fast forward to the end, interesting findings from this. We're asked it to summarize anything like the LinkedIn posts tell us about Sense and Boulevard specifically as company. So one is specific intent from the SVP of sales, from the CRO in this case. Content that Nicholas posts is exactly sort of the prospect that we look for. We have specific language that they've used. Right, like this would be if you're running outreach, the best outreach is when you can speak their language, and this is literally feeding it to you. And also like the differences in between them and how to approach said differences. Right here are the open seats that we should target. Here's right in terms of being AI native and then shipping AI native projects, open roles at the companies, channel partners that they use, right? All of this pulled specifically just from LinkedIn posts. And so, right, why are we doing this? Why do we want all of this here? This is because we want to contextualize. We want the most relevant context for our internal team, for our projects that we are working on, for any references, for any clients internally. And then also when we're dealing with prospects, we want to know everything we could possibly know about them. And so all of these things here lead us to get the best context possible. And then we have personalization, which will again tie into skills. The thing about personalization is it's low hanging fruit, but it's also, this is the part that when people in the go-to-market world, when people in sales, when people in marketing say, we are doing AI for go-to-market, what they usually mean in many cases is we're just using AI to write our emails, or we're using AI to write better emails, and they're editing their drafts and then they're using AI as a writer. It's a small layer. That's the first thing that I want to say. It's a small lift, and it's the wrong thing to optimize for.
there's a reason we left personalization till the 4th layer. And we spent so much time, he sat there for so long watching this video for the first 3 layers because the hard work is upstream of the email being written. This is where the groundwork is being laid. With that being said, there's still lift that you can get for personalization through skills. And there's 2 key skills that we have. Like all those skills that I'm referencing, they sit here in our repo, open sourcing this. If you're watching this on X, this will be in the replies. See if you're watching it on YouTube. But to dive deeper into the skill itself, 2 key skills that we're going to work with, which are the creative variable skill and the email writer skill. I'm going to open these files and just walk through them before we actually run them live. We're going to run them on our dear friends, the laundromat. So what are we doing here? Creative variable. What does the entire purpose of the skill? This skill is going to get you unique variables that your database cannot give. And we've trained this on our process, on our methodology to look for, right, once the right client context is loaded, to look for a wide, or to cast as wide a net as possible for unique variables that will help with outreach. And we'll do this in a number of ways. We'll do this through scraping online, and we'll do this by building custom prompts to enter into Clay. You will see the outputs in a moment. And then for email writer, and these things are chained together. So this is email writer is building on top of creative variable skill and also the signal builder skill from the first layer. It's pulling all of these into the writing methodology. There is a set of rules that we follow. There are campaign patterns that we highlight. And then also in the reference files, we also have some examples of emails for unique situations, right? Stuff that we've done for conferences, no signal, review signal, funding, tech stack, all of it. So when you put these together, let's see how this plays out live. I'm going to say, actually, I'm going to type out sense because they can't catch my pronunciation. Run the creative variable skill and the email writer skill. And whatever the outputs are, I'm going to ask for the output files to show up in HTML so we can see them easily. Give me the output files for creative variables and email writer in HTML. And first thing I'm going to call out is, as soon as I said sense, it ran the hook from the previous layer and immediately jumped into the folder. Everything we're doing is building on top of each other. And it already has the signals because we ran that in layer 1. So we're seeing layer 1 and layer 3 take place in layer 4. Compounding impact of our work. Everything replicates. Okay, I let this cook for a while, and the output it's giving me is a file for the creative variables that it used and the actual email campaigns. This is kind of like the prize of the last 4 layers. It's taken all the signals we fed, all the posts that we pulled, all the funding data, all the creative variables that we're going to see in a moment, and fed them to a sequence to specific prospects. I'm going to make this a bit more shareable. This is a / command that we have internally that went live today. Okay, it's giving me I was going to say creative variables 2. Let's open both. Starting with creative variables. What creative variables are I'm looking at this live for the first time. What creative variables are we going to pull for sense? Unique things that we haven't looked at just yet. And so here are all the sources that it's pulled before, but here are the variables. These are the outputs we're looking for. So variable 1 is raise summary. What is the actual takeaway from? So instead of just saying, congrats on the X dollar amount raise, it also wants to give us the context on the announcement date, how long ago it was, and the objective. Second is using press releases to get insight into their expansion goals. And then taking this further, we want to know what verticals they plan to expand into and why are these variables. These are things that we can then main in the emails later. And then leadership gap. So within the org chart, taking a look at the org chart, taking a look at their hiring, where is the gap? What are they looking for as a result? And all of these, right, are coming with sources and also ClayGen prompts are ways to find this and then dig further into each. There's more in here like on what is the actual operator pain that is felt. And it's intelligent in that, okay, this is a formula, not a ClayGen, right? You're not going to find this on Clay. This is a formula from all the previous data we've already pulled to scrape the specific variable that will fit into the email. There's more in here, but let's jump ahead to, okay, for rendered emails. I made one change to this, and let's see what it came up with. So it's split into prospects, right? First is the who? SVP of sales, then the co-founder CEO, and then the third co-founder. And we can see how deep the logic layer goes. So tell us every single we've pulled, right? Obviously, they've raised 140 million. You know that right away. Signal Builder Layer 1 told us that they're hiring a VP of marketing and VP of customer success. Our later signals told us that they're expanding into multiple verticals. We know now from the prospect post skill that they have a need to operate as a connected system. This is really good. And so we're going to speak to the pain that he's spoken to, starting with the hiring gap, and then talking about the fact that they can't find their target market easily. So this is what the first email looks like. I'll let you pause and have a read if you'd like. In the second email now, we're talking about the 4 new verticals specifically, right? We're getting more specific. These are announcements that are not on their website, but they've spoken about publicly. And it means a big change to how they source leads. And we get even deeper into that, right? Because now we know that a probable motion could be Google Maps plus MindBody, and offering basically like, this is what we would do as in V1, which is quite accurate actually. Scarily accurate, and an offer for me to send it. I think this is the kind of email that would land really well with Nicholas, because this is very specific. I don't think he's getting a lot of DMs that are like this third email. Then the message to the CEO, very different approach. In his case, we have specific media references that we've captured about vertical AI and how he looks at that. We know he's going to be a strategic buyer. And so we're going to make the parallel to him of context graph as a moat, which I like the framing of. So in the first email, we're speaking about the argument he's made lately, and trying to make that person and tying that into the VP marketing that they're hiring. Then speaking to the specific public piece that he put out, and trying to draw the analogy in a way that will be apparent to him about outbound architecture. Similar in the third email. And then for Gil, who is maybe the hardest prospect to reach as the CPO, we're going to reference his specific Series C note and tie that into the go-to-market motion. Make an offer in the third email as opposed to second email being a little bit more open-ended and ask questions, while also saying look, these are unique ideas we could push for this. And so what's the takeaway from this section is Claude writing emails for you is not the unlock. That was possible in 2023, 2024, 2025, right? Claude has always been better as a writing tool. That's not new. That's not novel. That's not that beneficial. Layer 4 in this video has been the shortest we shared so far compared to the first 3, because all the hard work happened up front to make the work in layer 4 be valuable in the first place. The 5th layer is, once we have all of our messaging, once we have all of our signals, we know who we're going to target, what we need to know about them, what we're going to say to them, the campaigns are live. The next question is, how do we get better over time? And there are a couple of interesting ways to accomplish this. And we're going to use a couple of primitives that are already built in here. So first, what are we going to do? I'm going to show how we improve on our performance in terms of Claude Code primitives. We have a skill that we built. The very first skill we built at the beginning with the skill creator was, how do we triage our replies to know what the replies we mean. The second thing we want to know is, well, we need to get the right data in. And so this is going to come from, in our case, Email Bison. Email Bison has a robust MCP. They have a really solid API that allows us to do different things with it. And we can pull in all of our replies from a specific workspace within specific dates. And then part of what you want is this iterative approach. And I want to share a little bit about how this has sort of taken place in Claude Code over time. In 2025, the big thing was the Ralph Rhythm loop. And the way this worked was basically, you could get Claude Code to work endlessly on a task. It would just keep working on it. And Claude Code adopted this and built their own plugin for Ralph. There wasn't any intelligence, or at least in a novel way, any intelligence added to this. It was just the ability to keep cranking on a task, right? Hence the name from this visual character. Okay, more recently, Karpathy came out with autoresearch, which he was using to run machine learning experiments. This must have been 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and things would run with self-evaluation against a real metric. So the objective is basically an agent is fed training code, a hypothesis is formed, it runs, either keeps or discards, and repeats. And it can run overnight for long durations of time. And so this is really good when you have a specific metric that you're training for. And so, right, this is the kind of world that this is the world that machine learning researchers live in. And you can see how, right, like he's aiming for a specific number here, and all the experiments over time get him closer and closer. And what other auto research does is gives researchers the ability to run these experiments, run many iterations of these experiments, and hence shorten the research time. And I've seen a lot of people try to build a non-machine learning version of auto research. And actually looked at a couple of these repos. And then yesterday they dropped goal, and goal is basically, right, you can see this here, just /goal and type in. You cannot do this in the desktop app, right? Like this has to be in terminal, but this is much better because what's happening here is goal is checking for a stated outcome. You give an outcome for something you want to get done, and it will run in turns. So the first turn will run, it will evaluate on its own, have we met the criteria for completing this task? And if the answer is no, it will run again. And so for any tasks you have where you're not confident that you're going to one-shot it, that can be damn near any task, but task where you need multiple iterations, and maybe you're tired of getting V1, giving you feedback, V1.1 and feedback again. You now have two LLMs that work together where one is working on the task and one is judging completion. This is much better suited for the type of work that we do, right? We are not technical researchers, we are marketing monkeys. Right? Like, that's just what it is. Any kind of workflow you have, anything where you can come out and say definitively, like, yes, this is done or this is not done, Goal does a great job of. And I'm surprised this wasn't a bigger deal that this dropped. And so, okay, practically speaking, how are we actually going to make use of this? For most go-to-market teams, when they say we are testing our outputs or we are going to run tests, what are they saying? It's very one-dimensional. We have a campaign, we're going to build a template, and then I'm going to A/B test it. V1 or the A version has a nice subject line and subject B has a mean subject line, and I'm going to let it run for a week and then look at both, and then I'll have a new test that I run. It's very static. I'm also guilty of having run this for a long time in the past, but it's a slow way to learn, and it forces you to send the same type of message again and again. What I want to do here with the help of Goal is optimize the scoring system for who we're reaching with LLMs, right? Because this is LLMs look at your data, try again and again, and then evaluate on their own and say, yes, this is good enough or not good enough. And if it's not good enough, it will keep trying. And a bit of a twist here in how I'm going to do this is, like, there is a bit of a auto research component to this. And I've already run this, right? Because this could take many turns. So this is something I ran before recording. But what we've done is we've taken the email Bison MCP, we've pulled out a bunch of replies from a campaign we ran in the past. And what I'm trying to do is get the LLM to be really good at predicting what signals lead to a response. Why do we do this? If we can get a really high score on how predictive our LLM can be, saying whether this type of prospect will get a response or this one wasn't, then we know what signals, what factors we should be going after. And then we get rid of this cheap analysis of, like, hey, I sent this email with this subject line or this CTA. We get into the meat of it, which is we had this thesis on who we wanted to target. And the data is messy, which is why it's very difficult to run this with a human or a team, because no one wants to sit there and sift through replies. But what we can do if this works is, if we can have LLM accurately predict what signals, what factors lead to responses. And this is kind of multivariate, that, like, there are many variables that go into this. If I try to explain this, like in the sense example, you can have a prospect that raised a lot of money, but
let's say if we were comparing Sense and all those other companies that we looked at and we ran a campaign on them,
we could come to the conclusion that
some emails go out to companies that have raised over $50 million, but they don't have
any announcement or any sort of intent for their go-to-market team becoming more AI native. Or maybe they are hiring actively, but they don't have any new verticals that they're looking to target. Your email tool cannot tell you what, like to that level of depth, what's working and what isn't. So I mean, goal has to be run in terminal. You can't run this in the desktop app.
And this is how specific the prompt was, because we want to get the prediction to work. We want the output here is how predictive,
how accurately can the LLM predict which leads are responding or are the ones who respond. And so we want a plus 0.2. So let's say it can currently predict blindly that 30% with 30% accuracy. We want to get that to 50, or from 50 to 70, whatever the starting point is. And this is quite a very like specific prompt here, because this is going to run again and again on its own. It's going to run for many turns. And so what we sort of learned from this is a few things. You can see the arc. You can see we ran this multiple times. This is more than a day because we tried multiple iterations of this. And so the big takeaways from here are things that we should not be doing. For example, we learned positives from the variant B copy, knowing that we should target one of these specific major metros, trying to keep this vague. It's a little bit difficult. Specific team sports facilities that make the most sense. We see the negative impact of rerun campaigns. We see some niche modalities really underperform compared to the mean. And you could see the impacts of the weighting. And this is really what you want, like to be predictive. Your ideal thing the ideal end state would be to say funding is 80% predictive, but if the founder says something about AI being AI native on LinkedIn, that's only 15% predictive because all the CEOs say that, right? Like that's how good you want to be. We're seeing weightings attached to specific things in here. Some added and some were reduced, like the low fit modalities, that they're not helping us at all with our analysis. And again, this just came out on, you can see the run dates, like goal came out on May 12th. The more data we feed this from Email Bison, the better the results are going to look. And so the one line takeaway from layer 5 is that
basically no human team is doing the extent of what I've just asked the LLMs to do. They're putting together connections and putting together the pieces of what's working and what isn't in a way that would take a human many hours of investigation to do. And GTM teams are not doing that. And so the final kind of layer that I'm going to share here, yes, we first have 5 layers, is just scheduling in routines. And what we want to do here is take all this work that's taken us so many steps and so many different sessions and have this run on its own for us every week at a specific time without us having to trigger it. In this case, what we're going to feed it is going to be, here are a list of companies I'm interested in. I want you to do the rest. Find out who to talk to at these companies, find out every piece of information about the company itself, find out what we're going to learn about them, find their LinkedIn content, find their job posts, find the company's intent, use all these signals together to write a specific campaign only to companies that and individuals that make sense at these orgs, and improve upon your work over time. And so what we're gonna do is jump into the routines pane over here. I'm gonna click on new routine, and this will be done locally. I'm gonna call this weekly prospecting. And the description is prospect evaluation. Mistake, guys. And instructions are, it won't give me a mic here, but I'm going to choose the folder first to make sure this is in the GTME folder. And the instructions will be take the target companies in my prospect folder, run our full skill stack on them. Start with signal builder. No, sorry, before signal builder, I want to research each company with subagents. That's the best platform to start with. Then start with signal builder, then prospect posts. Prospect posts. I should call this a skill. Create a variable skill, email writer skill, push an HTML file,
with the results at the end. You know what? I want a CSV file as well, just so I can make changes. I want this happen every week, 9 a.m. on Monday. If I click create, that's it. We're live next Monday. First results come in. Okay, if you made it to the end, what is the takeaway? What is the headline to take from this? It's easy to think, okay, wow, you know, AI can do GTM now.
That's not my takeaway from this video. The message I want you to go or to take from this is that,
well, yes, obviously AI can do GTM and it can do any form of knowledge work. And this has been the case for months now. That's not what's new. What's new is, I'd say 3 things. 1,
I've said this a lot. It's not about the model. It's not about being good at prompting. That's not a thing anymore.
It's about your ability to take advantage of, layer, and combine Claude Code's primitives. What I mean by that, they're
subagents, MCP servers,
skills, hooks, being able to build systems on top of these primitives and build systems that will improve over time. That's what the gain is now. That's first. Second is that it's not about trying to one-shot everything. It's about trying to bring in as much relevant context and composition as possible. If you're a VP of sales, you want your sales org to have the best, most informed, up-to-date context graph there is. You don't want to be the org that has thousands of hours of sales calls that no one is able to take advantage of, or to be the head of marketing where your battle cards are informed by your sales enablement hire instead of a system that's tracking what your salespeople are actually saying on calls and what, you know, the feedback that their customers are giving them about products that they used to use before. There's no reason in 2026 to do things the way you would do things in 2016, where, you know, you'd have high touch or some other tool, and then someone is responsible for maintaining, you know, how do we compare against this product? Is the content strategy for this feature against this competitor? You have so much data
in Slack, in HubSpot, Salesforce, in your sales engagement tools, in your sales calls,
that will give you much better information. Can you build the context graph for your team?
This also applies to if you're not part of a GTM or if you're an individual, you still want, whether this is like if you're using Obsidian to build out a second brain, you still want the best context graph possible for the best possible results.
And the third thing I would say is it's very important to have good operator taste. When we hire in GTM engineering, we're looking for, the number one skill is being able to get models, to get LLMs to do what you want them to do. And that's taste, right? Like, when do I wire this specific context in? When do I use a hook versus letting Claude Code do its own thing? How much context is too much context to feed a skill? That only comes from many iterations. It comes from being opinionated. It comes from being informed. It comes from staying on top of things and learning what, you know, your smartest peers are doing. It comes from spending an ungodly amount of time on X and LinkedIn. But the teams, I think the teams that are winning with AI are not the ones with the best prompts. They're the ones with the best primitives that build the best systems that improve over time. Okay, recap, right? These are the primitives we keep talking about, and these are the / commands that will let you level up your systems. And the entire video can kind of be summarized with this chart, using skills to find leads, using subagents to enrich your info while using the least amount of token usage you can, using hooks to pull in the right context at the right time, using MCP to connect to your external tools and feed in the right context you need, using more skills for personalization, and then being able to learn and improve by using MCP subagent skills, and also the goal command as well, and scheduling everything with routines. All the skills covered in the video are here. They will be linked, right? These are open source. Give them a try. Tell me what you think. Second is, if you're a founder, GTM leader that wants to build out these systems, I'm happy to answer any questions, happy to help. And third is, I will be making another video after this where, okay, we've looked at all of these and I've kind of rushed it. And I'm hoping this video is less than an hour. I will make separate videos on
skills specifically. One diving into skills, one diving into subagents, one diving into hooks, MCP.
a video explaining this evolution a little bit better, and hopefully with more concrete results using Go with more time to use it. That is all from me. Thanks so much for watching. Are up on YouTube, on X, on LinkedIn. See you soon.